advent of AI art, big parenthetical around art, has led to the easily observable phenomenon of people without talent using AI to essentially steal from others and pass off the resulting amalgamations as their own work. AI art is not art. I'm sure there's a philosophical debate someone might want to have on the subject and the nature of art, but as one of the main defining elements of the human experience, it is necessary to have things like creativity and effort put in for something to be considered art, or at the very least, a thought. AI has none of this, but it is new, it is easy, and it is being used everywhere to generate more content. From the recent news that James Cameron is on board developing an AI that is basically a slap in the face of the hardworking artists and creatives that have given him his career, to the recent video showing a bunch of A-list celebrities giving their voices to AI programs to use in future projects, AI is everywhere because it's seen as a cheap, fast way for people who want to make money to make more money. If you own an IP, why not just make more of it with AI instead of having to hire creatives and more? Now, that is a topic deserving of its own video, so let me know if you want me to dig deep into it, because frankly, I find it depressing, but I will do it if you want. That's how much you mean to me. Yeah, you. But while Hollywood art and independent publishing get most of the bad press around proliferating the scourge of AI that is sous videing the planet so Facebook grandmas can post pictures of Trump holding a minion, AI has also seeped into video games, primarily through console storefronts like the PlayStation 5. Shovelware trash is regrettably no stranger to PC audiences, mostly thanks to things like Steam Greenlight. But now we are in a state of absolutely unprecedented lack of content or quality control across nearly every major console and platform. And when I say a lack of control, I'm talking about stuff like this available right now on the PlayStation 5. Games like this are being falsely advertised using AI, not only in thumbnails, but for screenshots. These lazy asset flips are essentially scams, often ported from or built on mobile phone game infrastructure and priced anywhere from $5 to $25, based apparently on how much the developer thinks they can swindle a customer for. But as I'll show, it's not just shoddy craftsmanship on display here, but as I dig into and actually play through several of these shit piles, they straight up use trademarked logos, IP, and content in their advertising, gameplay, and scanned AI slop. And it's all available right now to purchase on Sony's store. But first, I want to briefly talk about the history of games like this, by which I mean the asset flip. About a decade ago, Steam announced Steam Greenlight, a project meant to make it easier for smaller indie game developers to get their content seen and approved by a wider community. While this was at first blush a great way to open the doors of game creation to a wider audience and to help those games get seen by interested buyers, it ended up being what can only scientifically be described as a total nightmare clown shoe shit show on idiot wheels. Greenlight began in 2012 at the dawning of the indie game boom that included gems like Fez, Amnesia, Braid, and plenty of others. And in fairness, there were a lot of good games that made it through the service as intended, like Kentucky Route Zero and Hyper Light Drifter, but then there was everything else. Because of the Steam voting system, many developers, and I say developers by the way, with the biggest quotations possible, saw Greenlight as an opportunity to show their cheap, tacky wares that they put next to no effort into. Stephanie Sterling has a wonderful playlist documenting the phenomenon of asset flips, where a developer will take default engine assets, typically meant to make first-time hobby-level game creation a bit less intensive, and they will instead try to sell and market their products as full games, despite the fact that they were the gaming equivalent of a cardboard cutout of an actual video game. Bad, cheap, poorly made games are nothing new. You have infamous jankware like Big Rigs Off-the-Road Racing to show the phenomenon has been around for a while, but with the proliferation of digital storefronts and company measures like Steam Greenlight, the sheer amount of terrible copy-paste low-effort garbage has evolved over time to an untenable deluge. For years, it's been a massive problem on Steam that goes entirely unacknowledged by the platform, and unsurprisingly, a similar lack of oversight extends to the mobile phone gaming space. It's here you see a wealth of awful clip art basic puzzle games that Newgrounds would have thrown onto the street. For places like Steam, these games are often cheap, sometimes starting at 99 cents and going for less on sales, and are easy ways to rack up Steam achievements, sometimes even triggering dozens and dozens of achievements easily for people who care about that kind of thing. On phones, these half-assed asset abominations are usually free and replete with ads or in-game currencies, and across all platforms there are a few things uniting the games, such as faceless characters, a focus on zombies or generic horror creatures pulled from asset packs, large, aimless level design, and generally floaty, bad gameplay because for most of these things, they weren't intended to be full games, but basically tutorials for people to help develop their own games. Asset flips are the video game equivalent of taking a spelling test, getting a C+, then attempting to publish that test as a book and claim you're an author. These are all byproducts of developers' lack of any talent or ambition. I speak from experience when I say making games is not easy. It's partially why I want this Babylon Bee dork to convince the Daily Wire to try and make one. Oh, please, God, Jeremy, please add game developer to your list of failures in life right next to competent filmmaker and able to please your wife. As easy as some beginner engines can be to interface with and technically make a running product, making a good original unique game is not easy. There is no shortcut to art, just practice, hard work, and lots of playtesting. But has that stopped lazy, terrible developers from now infecting console storefronts? Damn no! This isn't a strictly new phenomenon. I want to get that out of the way. Steam asset flip level garbage really began clogging up console storefronts a few years ago. I particularly noticed an onslaught around the time the Switch dropped and people were looking for games to play on this amazing handheld system that had a phenomenal purchase attach rate and a touchscreen, making ports of lazy phone games relatively easy to sell. The key developers used to manipulate the storefront on Switch was pricing their games higher and then perpetually putting them on sale so they would be featured on the deal's front page. Nintendo must at least partially be aware of this tactic, as most of the piss-poor garbage doesn't show up if you browse on the desktop, but no such luck for people who actually want to, buy games on the Switch. Because of this glut of barely functional garbage, the Switch digital store has infamously become a chore to navigate because if you go to the deals section, there are hundreds of games that are literally worthless, taking up space and slowing navigation of the storefront to a miserable crawl as you try and dig through for something worthwhile. The PS4 and lesser extent Xbox One have fallen victim to this plague over time, with the PS4 receiving some of the most notable examples from video game auteur Gilson B. Pontes. Who is Gilson B. Pontes, I hear you asking, which means it's time for a quick tangent. Well, only the genius mind behind the epic action-adventure games like Samael, Legacy of the Crisis, and Sword of Fortress, the Onamusim. From the IMDb page that I'm almost entirely sure he made and wrote about himself, quote, Gilson B. Pontes is a remarkable game designer, director, and known producer for his innovative and immersive game titles. His works, such as Ashigaru and Taishogun, have been celebrated at prestigious events like the Indie Live Expo Festival. Every year or so, Gilson splats out one of these lazy asset flips he markets as though they're actual games, often attempting to emulate the look and feel of a Souls-like without any of the responsive controls, interesting environments, good enemy design, or anything resembling fun or competency. The egregious part is that he often sells them north of $25 to begin with. In many ways, Gilson's video game efforts were the tea leaves for the infestation of absolute garbage clogging up storefronts now, with many commentators questioning how such garbage could be allowed on PlayStation's storefront, and more importantly, why they kept letting it happen. I'm all for a rough game, or one that isn't to everyone's taste. Not all art needs to be for all people, but in cases like this, where it's so plainly clear that there is no effort, iteration, or value beyond tricking people out of $20 or more of an asset flip running through a field for 5 minutes only to die in one hit, these are essentially just scams. Now, for his part, Gilson seems to take his unearned creative titles very seriously, emulating Hideo Kojima with his intro sequences. It's very funny, he doesn't seem to know what some words like mechanical design mean, and he seems to just be including them because he saw them at the beginning of a Kojima game. Another one you might remember from a few years back was an execrable little gem called Life of Black Tiger, which made instant meme gold because people could not believe that Sony would let something like this through quality control and onto their console. I mean, Steam? Sure, that's a lawless nightmare wasteland. They got porn on there, right on the front page. They got some good stuff. But now, the situation on PS5 has grown untenable. Not only is the PlayStation 5 store kind of terrible to navigate to begin with no easy way to simply browse by upcoming releases or new releases, they all kind of get lumped together, but it has been overrun by the same kind of low-effort asset flip garbage that people complained about on Steam a decade ago. And after getting just a taste of how lazy and craven the asset flip developers are, It shouldn't surprise you that they are also heavily using AI to market these games. From the games I've looked at, there are 3 main culprits responsible: Cool Devs SRL, Nostra Games Limited, and Chatrushka Softworks. In September alone, Cool Devs released 5 basic asset flip games, nearly one a week. Nostra Games Limited has nearly as many releases, with its AI cover art straight up ripping off One Piece for a pirate asset flip, and literally using a voice clip from SpongeBob SquarePants in an AI narrated trailer for another.
Go. Take the order. Give it to the cook.
A few moments later.
Give it to the customer.
It's amazing that things like this just got through quality control. I don't think the IP holders would be so jazzed to see it, however. I'll get to Chatrushka Softworks in a minute, but there are so many other developers clogging up the storefront right now with games that might just be the same game in some cases. Like with Mortar Master and Minefield Combat, both made by Kodobur. One big commonality with these lazy cash grabs is an emphasis on simulators, by which they mean they will reuse the exact same game template with slightly different AI assets on the advertising and call it a day. In particular, supermarket-based simulators are basically a pocket genre of asset flip sludge unto itself. For example, Fashion Store Simulator by completely legitimate business person Maxim Wiosochansky trading as Indie Games 3000, that's the whole name of the publisher, uses the exact same asset packs as Supermarket Manager 2024. Supermarket Manager 2024, by the way, completely different from Supermarket Simulator 2024 made by Cool Devs SRL, that looks as though it uses the same basic game template as Martian Shopping with different assets. Then there's Supermarket Simulator Pro from SRL Random Spin Games, and Supermarket Shopping Simulator, which has one of the worst AI thumbnails mangling the actual words and showing a character that has supermarket simulated so much they've fused with the cart in a Cronenbergian monstrosity. You've also got Supermarket Management Simulator Empire 2024. You've also got Supermarket Manager Simulator Empire 2024, Supermarket Simulator Grocery Empire 3D, Supermarket Simulator Manager, Supermarket Owner Simulator, and it somehow doesn't end there because there's a new Supermarket Simulator 2024 and Hypermarket Simulator 2024, apparently both coming soon, with Hypermarket featuring something Chatrushka does a lot: run its shitty game screenshots through an AI filter, purposefully misrepresenting what the gameplay actually looks like. And there are about a half dozen more on the coming soon side of the store. This coming soon tactic is another way to manipulate storefronts to get these games more attention. As many online and in forums have noted, these hack-ass developers will change release dates on their games, allowing the titles an extended stay on the top of these coming soon pages, and thus in front of the eyes of unaware customers. If you're wondering if there's any difference between these games, not that I can tell. All of the poorly edited trailers pull from similar asset packs with similarly dull and unbaked lighting and similarly simplistic gameplay. Like the AI being used to market these playable turds, they don't actually represent gaming or a video game storefront so much as content sludge that is coagulated and now stretches for miles wherever you look. And to give an idea of how little effort went into these games, you can find the asset packs that were used in them within seconds on the Unity store. And you might be saying, well, there aren't games at least entirely made with AI, but there are. Like Ocean Media's Found Object Opus, Destination Paradise Collector's Edition, which is a found object and slide puzzle game seemingly made entirely with AI. The very basic puzzle game style is likewise very popular, featuring plenty of games with AI-generated anime girls and absolutely nothing of value. And all of the games I've shown here all came out in the last few months to give an idea of the scale of this problem. Now, unfortunately, I let my curiosity get the better of me and chose one of the big 3 offenders, Chatrushka Softworks, and dove into 4 of their miserable, broken titles to see just how bad these games actually were. Initially, I was drawn in by the horrid monstrosities meant to be player characters. I stared at these screens for several minutes trying to figure out why it all looked so uncanny. It's because the screenshots were passed through an AI filter. At no point does Garage Simulator look anything close to this. This AI filtering is rampant with these games, creating these frumpy monstrosities that I guess are meant to approximate photorealism, like an alchemical reaction with the base ingredient being the uncooked dog shit that is these asset flips. It's blatant false advertising, yet also looks so horrid that while it is advertising something that technically isn't what you get, it's also worse than what the games look like themselves. So I played Garage Simulator. Even the start screen is an awful low-res AI JPEG that gets worse the longer you look at it, with a terrible looping soundtrack to boot. And the first character you unlock is... oh god. Oh dear god, what happened to you? He looks like one of those bodybuilders who injects oil, but after 10 years when the oil pockets get all, like, soggy and lumpy. So anyway, you start the game as your average Joe Rogan fan, and your first job is repainting the car and applying sticker on the car. Seems easy enough, yes? Amazingly, no matter how bad the game looked, it's worse in action. And like the god-awful AI splash screens, it gets worse the longer you look at it. The game acts like you get a car or character selection, but there's only ever one of each. The pause button, from the very obvious phone interface, is just floating there ominously like an omen of impending doom. Some of the tools in the UI aren't even labeled. They misspelled vinyl in 2 different ways. The character Buff McWetman controls like the tank controls in Resident Evil 1 got drunk and side-fucked Bubsy 3D. And you might be saying, well, it can be a little jank, but maybe there's gameplay depth. There's not. You walk back and forth as the assets around you shift and jitter like they're fiending for a fentanyl fix, using 5 tools and unlocking a gold trophy every step of the way for 4 minutes, then it shits you back out to the main menu. There is an option on the main menu screen for car tow and repair that unlocks after beating all 6 stages, and this is, well, it's technically more game because you press buttons and things happen on screen, but this is just a small asset flipped sandbox where you play as a killdozer tow truck and retrieve cars and bring them back to do the exact same maintenance, rinse and repeat another 6 times, except you won't, because all of the trophies have already unlocked after the 5th maintenance session. So the only time I can imagine someone spending with this by choice is they're either forced into a jigsaw trap to either play that or they die, or they're a YouTuber. Either way, it's called self-harm, babes. And also, I don't know how this is possible, but the trophies that unlock don't even appear to be accessible on my PlayStation Store account. Like, I got notifications and screenshots, but there's nothing on the actual trophy list. That is basic functionality at a system level, and I've played some real garbage, but have never seen anything like this get through a QA filter. During my research for these developers, I actually found someone complaining that the problem went deeper, as someone who bought a game by Chatruska Softworks was unable to actually sync their trophy list at all after unlocking some trophies in that game. Next up was 4x4 Adventure Off-Road something or another. You start with another basic phone interface, same basic level-based mobile gameplay with a bunch of barely legally distinct cars. You start it up and you even get a license plate. What does that say? You then proceed to go move about as fast as a snail overdosing on ketamine as you experience the raw thrills of basic physics objects and unavoidable damage. That's a penalty, I guess. Turns out all of these numbers are like credit card money. Fake. I hate it here. Yeah, these damage numbers might look bad, but they're nothing compared to the irreparable damage being done to my psyche. Also, just like the mechanic game, you unlock gold trophies easily, but there's no way to actually see them on your profile. It's like even the PlayStation 5 console is offended that you would use the same system. You could play Witcher 3 with ray tracing or whatever for the gaming equivalent of a PlayStation 1 game stillbirth. Now, I got stuck on level 7 because the truck high-centered on a pile of logs, and I feel that's a poetic end to my journey in this particular digital hellscape, so I skipped on over to the next game, Visa Control USA Border Simulator, which uses the same weird AI screenshots. This game, based on the main menu, actually appears to be called Check-In and has a similar basic phone interface design, so no points for consistency in its title. But otherwise everything appears to be in order, and by that I mean it's all fucked. It's all kinds of cattywampus. It also crashed on startup, going to a darkened screen and never loading when I hit new game, so I had to restart the game and I hit continue, and it just went dark again and opened on day 1, I guess. Also, I doubt they have the right to use the actual Windows desktop logo here. Now, you fight controls that are so oversensitive they'd make your divorced uncle who comes to Thanksgiving in a Trump hat jealous. You press a button, and soon unemployed N64 Perfect Dark character models are throwing JPEGs at you, which makes this already the most interesting game of the bunch. So you just approve or disapprove people, and the first one the game leads you to disapprove of is the first black man in line, which... sus. Apparently, I let in the wrong person, and the game is over, so I try it again. This time I decide to hit no on anyone not in good health, because the game apparently said I let in somebody infected or something, except now the economy is in shambles, fuck me. Except this time, when I lose, there's no reticle to restart the game that pops up. It literally doesn't have a way to select anything on the screen, which seems like another sign from PlayStation, or maybe God, that it's time to move on. The fourth and final game I checked out from the Chatrushka oeuvre was Street Survival Homeless Simulator, a game that featured the most egregious AI scanned screenshots of the bunch. The contrast and coloring on here just pushed all the way up. Got that one kid who took artistic photos of doors and windows and used every Photoshop filter in my high school photo class, found an outlet for his talent, I suppose. And let me tell you how I knew it was AI, because the game looks like this. Yes, this appears to be a PlayStation 2 model in a mostly untextured alleyway, crying over random assets in a blurry wall with an AI image dancing above his head. The game starts off like a Capitol Hill Democrat right after losing an election, telling you to beg for more money. Oh, sorry, too soon? No, that one's evergreen. You need to get 50 coins apparently as you go around this city that feels like if San Andreas had brain damage. There's a map that's literally just a low-res version of the level because they couldn't be fucked to make an actual asset. Speaking of assets, yes, that's the actual waste management symbol. Pretty sure they don't have the rights to that either. All of the assets in this game feel ripped from a GTA design pack, by the way, from the run animation to combat. It's obvious whoever made these animations was looking to GTA 4 or 5 for reference. Oh, and you can tell it's an attempt to approximate GTA because of the notoriety system, which, unsurprisingly, doesn't work. You can just assault and kill anyone, even cops, and it changes nothing about the world around you, aside from raising the stars. There's something so unsettling about this awful ramshackle world with its flat PS2 era storefronts, ever-shifting streets, vague early 360 bloom and piss filter, and the droning royalty-free stock music on constant repeat, while no other sounds can be heard. It's like every generation of gaming came together in one massive, collective expulsion of the worst elements of video games. It's like Two Girls, One Cup if the girls were Superman 64 and Ride to Hell Retribution. So, by now, you must be asking, who are these game development mavericks who threw all caution to the wind and just appear to be releasing a cascade of unaltered asset packs on a console storefront while using trademark content and AI to market said games? Well, I did some digging and found some interesting commonalities between these companies. Let's start with Chatrushka Softworks. It's based in Moldova, according to Compass, and the one LinkedIn employee, Ion Vasilia, he's also in several Unity developer groups on LinkedIn and has previously worked at Midnight Works. During my research into Chatrushka, I found on a website called b2bhint.com, a website that apparently catalogs information on companies like this, that Cool Devs SRL is actually associated with Chatrushka, specifically through Chatrushka Dimitru, the founder of Chatrushka Softworks, so I have reason to believe that he owns both of the companies. Interestingly, when you look him up on LinkedIn, it says that he owns Dimensy Game Dev Studio, but doesn't mention either Chatrushka or Cool Devs. And when you go to Dimensy, you see it's actually a porting house, something that a lot of these other developers claim to be. So it's entirely possible that this is an entirely different person who just also happens to be in the business of scamming people with poor AI-generated games, who also happens to live in Moldova, or it's the same person that connects all of these things, at least tangentially. On his LinkedIn, Ion Vasilitia was also listed as working at Dimensy Games before Midnight Works and Chatrushka Softworks, another connection between all of these suspiciously similar port houses that also all happen to be in the exact same area of Moldova. Now, I decided to look up another one of these developers, GoGame, and when I was looking up GoGame, I found a Reddit post talking about a developer called Midnight Works, attributing several similar half-assed asset flips calling up the Nintendo Switch store to the company. Then I remembered I had seen that name before in the aforementioned LinkedIn profile of Ion Vasilitia. It turns out that Chatrushka and several others may just be the newest iteration of Midnight Works, though information on the links between them all is tenuous at best and incredibly hard to find, likely by design. What I can say with some degree of certainty is that these developers have been for over a year exploiting the storefront system to make sure their garbage shovelware stays on the top of the pile. Going down a rabbit hole, Midnight Works appears to be constantly hiring, but also noticeably uses a group of attractive young women in advertisement for itself, with the girls appearing to be different between videos. Most of the posts on the main LinkedIn are shared by the IT recruiter Gali Ravenku. And it's all sus. It's all sus. I can't find any proof of anything, but Can you really look at this thing and tell me it's not suspicious as hell? Moving on to another one of these companies, Gaming Dev SRL. It's another developer that's behind these poor excuses for games infesting these storefronts, and they've actually even garnered some press attention for their blatant attempts to steal other well-known game spotlights. If you couldn't tell, this is another primary tactic for these developers, attempting to cash in on a streamer flavor of the week, which is why there's so many goddamn asset-flipped simulator games. It's like when you were 9 and you saw Transmorphers on the shelf next to Transformers, except there's now 1,000 copies of Transmorphers and they release new ones every week. Then there's Nostra Games, which is apparently based in Cyprus? Outside of Midnight Works and Chatrushka, a number of these developers aren't actually developers, but appear to be some kind of port houses that just shit out bad content, advertising their services as publishers for independent game devs who want to get their games seen and played on storefronts. However, it's hard to tell again whether that's actually what they do, or if it's just a cover for them to put their own shoddy asset flips onto stores. Like the developer Publish Me. I reached out to this developer to see about actually getting a game published. They never got back to me after several months, so take from that what you will. This website says they're based in Dubai. Or Kodabur, which appears to be based in Turkey. Or Go Game, console publisher limited, another porting service. Or Game to Top. This is another quote-unquote porting house, but I noticed another odd callback from my research, as this AI image on the Game to Top website is the same AI image as this post from Nostra Games, another outlet, on LinkedIn. Also, nearly everything on this company page is AI generated, which isn't the only time I've seen that happen, as another one of these developers, 404 Games, their website appears to be entirely made using AI. Even a girl on the website they claim to be is an employee of the company is completely AI. I literally think the entire website is made with AI, including the testimonials that talk about the process of working with this company. They say names and positions like CEO, but not of what company or group. Like, is this the CEO of this company praising how easy it is to work with this company? Now, with all of these incredibly suspicious companies that are essentially scams being propped up by AI, almost no information on where they're based and actually who runs them, at least none that's easily accessible, one might be drawn into conspiratorial thinking. And it certainly doesn't help that some of these developers, like the aforementioned Midnight Works, have attempted to relabel themselves in the past to cover up their shoddy work, and other companies like Gaming Dev SRL have seemingly no issues just rebranding their knockoff games on a whim for similar reasons. There's very little consistency or stability between these developers, except for the shoddy business practices that unite them all, mostly selling vapid, terrible games using false advertisement and copyrighted content on Sony's store in broad daylight. Now, I have my suspicions about the links to Chatrushka and Midnight Softworks and the validity of these other developers who all put out shockingly similar product, yet appear to be based of, or at least registered in other countries. Are there actually this many half-assed publishing studios being run out of Eastern Europe and the Middle East with no oversight? Or is it actually a small ring of talentless hacks who have figured out a way to game the system using different names and SRLs to mask their activity? Who's to say? I can't say for sure, and I don't want to speculate on the legality of what's happening here. I'm sure some Romanian tax agent will uncover what's really going on here in a decade or so, but with these companies' limited online presences, it's not easy to dig into anything about them or where they come from. And like I said, it's likely on purpose. I spent hours looking into these companies, and while I didn't find any kind of definitive proof there's some concentrated multinational conspiracy or money laundering ring, that doesn't change the fact that there is still a massive effort to flood console storefronts with scams. I've talked about it before, but the instinct to buy into conspiracy is often just a want for reality to be more exciting than the mundane truth. Would it be more interesting if there was some big money laundering ring working on Sony's storefront? Yeah, sure, but there's no evidence I can find of that. Instead, the reality is that Sony is in fact allowing these shitty hacks to rip people off with lax content moderation that allows these developers to flood the PlayStation Store with asset flips, gaming the system to keep their piles of shit in plain view of the buying public. And you might hear this screed and say, well, so what? Let the marketplace decide if a game is good. Eventually, they'll stop making them. But we know people like this won't. If nobody like the console owner stops them, the talentless hacks will keep pumping out these raw cash grabs. And that doesn't just affect the visibility of the storefront, it has a knock-on effect that harms small developers. And I mean game developers who are actually putting time and effort in. At first glance, good or even great games can be visually buried with this asset flip trash when they're also taking up real estate in the coming soon and sale sections of the store. Who is going to take any time to actually look through new releases or sales? Outside of the big AAA gaming releases or a niche game you might look forward to, the proliferation of garbage like this undercuts any desire to actually look at the games coming out, which is also bad for the console maker who should want to get as many people in the door as possible. Games like these have literally no reason to exist beyond making slight profit margins and overrunning storefronts. Gaming is a truly wonderful artistic medium full of experimentation, creativity, and the realized and shared dreams of its creators. This slop, on the other hand, is worse than worthless. It's actively harmful. And at this point, any storefront that continues to not care about its audience or the developers on said storefront and allows this to keep happening isn't just ignoring a problem anymore. They're pissing in the faces of the rest of the game industry. Yet the continued expansion of AI only means that, like everything else, unless something is done soon, this is the content future we can look forward to. Endless fields of churning sludge that nobody wants or needs, yet is sold to us all the same. Hello everybody out there, and thank you for watching this latest little deep dive investigative video. I realize this isn't usually what I do, but my channel was started with video games. I still play a lot of video games, and on occasion, I can still find some things to say. I've been working on this one for a while, and my last big deep dive documentary video, which you haven't checked it out yet, please do, took a lot of both time and effort and resources on my plate, so I'm just getting to this now, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like my documentary work, if you like my investigative work, if you'd like to even just help me out with the upcoming trip to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, please look at the links down below. Throw a couple bucks my way over at Patreon. You can get access to the cool Dead Domain fan Discord server, where you can join all these cool cats and kittens and hang out and talk about stuff. It's a really nifty, neat little group of groovy little people. And with all that out of the way, I want to thank you once more emphatically for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.